Good morning. Had my mic muted, of course. Mindworm in the chat. Hello. Hello, Mindworm. Okay. So I think everything's working. I'll get started here in a second. Let me just confirm a couple of things here. I think we're good. Mindstream in the chat. Mindworm, Jesus. Mindworm in the chat. Hangover, yeah. Those Presidentes are no joke. Okay. Um, yeah, let me just start. So the goal for today is to I have a bunch of smoke tests here for tinyAgent. And if you don't know what tinyAgent is, um, it's a really simple AI agent framework, and it specializes in tool calling via JSON. And I have a good foundation. And anytime I push to the pip library, I have a bunch of smoke tests that go off, but they're not real tests. They're just kind of making sure nothing is breaking. So I'm going to transition all those tests to real PyTest versus just making sure they run. So I got about, I think I want to say 10 or so. So I'm going to be converting all these to real tests, and then we'll go from there. Okay. So the first test that I have is the simplest test that I can make. So it's a tool in tinyAgent. It's a simple function with a decorator, and then you pass that to the agent. The agent is just this here. You say, hey, here's my tool. Then you just pass it a natural language query, and then it should return the tool being used correctly. Let me, one second. Let me exit out of my. Okay, just had to spell a key there real quickly. Okay, so the first test is just a simple. Here I have it actually. Just a simple tool call, making sure that it's working, and it should pick up all these queries with the natural language. It should pick them up cleanly, no matter which way you input it. The agent's based on the model that you're using. It should be able to infer what you're meaning, right? So in this case, all these test cases pass. The tool is a calculation tool, and it tries to test all these different type of queries with the expected results. If it gets them, it passes. So this one we're good. We don't need to really do much here. The second tool or second agent test is it's a test for the tool that I call tinyChain, and it's pretty much just combining a bunch of tools into a single flow. It should pass. It should try to infer the best way to plan it, and then it's gonna try to run them. And if it doesn't, if the planning phase of that fails, then it will try to just go in order. So let me clean this up first. So in this flow or chain, what it's trying to do, it's going to try to use a search tool, use a browser tool, and those tools are already in the library. And then the tool we make on the fly, which is just a simple summarize tool that we say, hey, try to summarize the outputs of the tools. So it should work. Let's see. And this one might take a second, so I'll let it go. But it should look up the URLs with DuckDuckGo. It should try to go to one of those URLs it got from DuckDuckGo using its browser tool, and then it should summarize the whole thing. Okay, so it passed, but there were some warnings there, and I think that's just more of the libraries. Let me check here. Okay, so test pass. There's some warnings, but I'm assuming it's just going to be from the warning that we get from the library. Rip in the chat. I'm streaming your stream. Okay, so where was I? So the test pass here. It should probably be something a little bit more robust, but due to the fact that I can't really see or I can't really see or expect a specific output because of the tool being some weird summarization. It should just meet the basic requirements of does it run and is the result not empty. If it meets that, then we're good. So now to actually make a tool here or a real test, I'm going to convert this to a test. So it's already a basic smoke test, and I think it's just testing. Let me see. It's just testing to make sure that the rag is working. It already has I think the script that I made already sets up the environment and everything. Let me check. Run this really quickly so I can see what it actually is doing. It's going to set up its own separate environment, and I believe it's just making sure that it looks good. So Jin, what is Tiny? So Tiny Agent is a really simple AI agent framework, and it primarily works by making functions tools, and those tools get used by the agent via JSON. And let me link you the site. But I give you a quick. Hang on. So this is a quick. I guess like 5 second pitch. So it's just two imports. You define your tool by passing a decorator, and then you pass it to the agent, and then the agent returns a result. And it all works 100% with JSON, and most models are able to infer how to use it. But the big difference between this and all the other frameworks is I'm just trying to do two things primarily. I'm trying to pass the agent tool, and the agent can be a simple, like, I just got a simple function here that returns your name, right? But also, as you get more advanced, you can chain these together, and you can have all those simple tools be converted to a more complicated, quote unquote, orchestration. And that's all it is, right? I'm not trying to solve every single problem, which the issue that I see a lot of other frameworks having is they tend to, the whole idea of agents is to remove some of the abstractions and just like get out of the way and just they should handle all that. But they're trying to do too much at one time. And it leads to a bunch of like tech debt. It leads to a bunch. There's a reason why LangChain documentation sucks. It's because it's almost not their fault because they're trying to do so much. They have so many different versions and so many different upgrades. And you get the point, right? Like it's just a mess. Matrix A plans on tokenizing your AI agent. What do you mean? I'm not familiar with tokenizing. Okay, this test is taking a while, and I'm assuming there's something wrong with the pip. Whatever, let's just cancel this for now. The test. Okay, so the rag test. So calculate. Okay, so using the basic tool of memory of Jesus of calculations, and then it passes this to the Chroma vector DB, and then it says test it by making sure that it can find the semantic and the recent and the similarity. Okay, that makes sense. Matrix like crypto related coining your product. No, I don't think so. I did get a couple of offers a while ago, but I'm just that's not really my world. Honestly, I don't really partake in the crypto. Um, and I'm using. Let me see if I can pull it up here. I'm using Task Master to try to keep everything in line, and it's a really good tool. I'm actually surprised that a lot of people are not talking about it more. All right, so right now in the process of making all these smoke tests into real pi tests. So yeah, I'm just gonna honestly sort of use. I'm gonna use 3.5. I'm gonna use the agent to try to help me out here. And the great thing about Taskmaster is that it ties in directly to the agent, so the agent can actually go and see what we're supposed to be working on, and it can pass that really small reference, but it keeps it in order. But of course, like right there, right, it's going to try to make its own test. And this is where you can get in trouble with vibe coding. If you don't monitor it, you basically have to be a project manager for the agent. Because if I had let that happen, if I just kept letting it happen, you'll end up with a big mess in your code base, which is the primary issue with vibe coding. Once you reach a certain complexity point, you really have to be really nitpicky with what the agent is trying to give you. But anyways, test. Let's convert this test to a real unit PyTest. Let's see what this gives me, and I might switch over to Gemini or 3.7, just depending on what it gives me here. Yeah, I might switch over here to a different model. 3.5 and 3.7 in general tend to be the busiest. I probably will switch over to 4.1 here in a second. Let's see what happens. Okay, yeah, no. Going to use 4.1, which is a very good model, and I don't see a lot of people talking about it. Actually, I need to give context. 1 second. Okay, so it has a proper context, and it's going to one of the things I really like about 4.1, it's really effective at number one, knowing what context it needs to make the request, and then it'll give you a quick plan, or you can see it thinking, quote unquote. It's not a real reasoning model, but the way it behaves is very reasoning like. So you can see it's trying to get the context of the issue first, and then it's going to try to make the plan. So I'm going to see what it gives me, and then we'll go from there. Okay, so a perfect example, the agent tried to run its own tests, and because of the fact that it didn't activate the virtual environment, it's not going to be able to pass no matter what, right? So I'm going to try running myself. Let's see what we get. Which, if it one-shot it, I'll be pretty surprised. We'll see. Yeah, okay, so it failed. Oh, wait, you know what? I don't have Chroma installed. That's right. It's a new environment. With your vibe coding with your own light. Yes, it's it's vibeception over here. Okay, so that's gonna take a while to install. But yeah, I really love 4.1 in the way it behaves. It has probably the most reasoning model characteristics, but without all of the delay with the actual like thinking, quote unquote. It's really effective at just taking what it needs, making a plan, and executing it. I wouldn't say it's as good as some reasoning models, but between the price and the ability to iterate, I think it's really good. All right, Jesus Christ, I got to install since Transformers. All right, yeah, I apologize. This is a brand new environment, and I was raging at my other setup, so I rage quit that one, and I met a whole new environment. So just bear with me here. Give me 1 second. Let me read my documentation here. Let me install the rag function. And this is going to take a second. It's the sentence transformer library is pretty heavy, but I forgot that I also need to set that up because I'm going to be testing both the local version and the embedding OpenAI model. And while it's installing, I'll see what it tried to do. Okay, imported the library. That's not an issue. Parameterize. Okay. Put in the chat. Is it really going to be vibes all the way down in the future? I can't put so back. It's over. Um, I think the real answer is it's going to be depending and complex. And I think nobody wants to hear that. Everyone wants like a simple yes or no. But the reality is a lot of web CRUD work can easily be replaced by a model, right? Um, myself, I've seen it with some of my juniors that I used to have them do some work on the front end that would take them, let's say, a few days to a week. Now, I can have them do that in a day, right? Why do we need 10 juniors now? We can have two and the models. But on top of that, you have to really be able to execute even, I would say, more now because, okay, yeah, you can make, and I was talking to this with someone about it yesterday, but it's like TypeScript, CRUD, web, all that stuff. It's, anyone can do that, right? Anyone can do it and say, hey, I shipped it. They can use Vercel. They can use Supabase. The differentiator is the ability to execute well. The blue roofs on Twitch. Hello. And the big differentiator between a good and bad vibe coder, in my opinion, is the ability to execute cleanly with well documented code the ability to set up a, like, yeah, anyone can set up a versatile environment. Can you do it in a way that's, if I gave you a $5 box, could you do it the same way? Could you do it well executed? Is what I'm trying to get at here, right? Because the ability to scale is pretty easy. Like, that's been pretty much solved. A simple AWS environment can scale up no problem just by being retarded and hidden, increase, 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 right? How do you do that in the most valuable way for the shareholders? It's a meme, but it's not. It's like, who can do it the best? So I think that's where we're going to see a lot of stuff moving on to. I think the coding aspect has almost been figured out. Now, obviously, I'm not talking about low level stuff, right? Like, I do some work with robotics, and that's all C and C++. And the models aren't as good there, but that's only a matter of time before the models improve, get more training data, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, I think the future is going to be a little bit different. I don't think it's going to go away completely. I think it'll just be more people will be expected to use more tools and do a lot more. Whereas, back in the day, people were getting paid six figures to use or to move around a div. With me, chats. I got a couple of technical issues here. Uh, 1 second. Okay, sorry about that. Not sure what happened with the stream chats. I think it's having some issues with Twitch. But quick in the chat. So the biggest problem I'm having is seeing the right level of mental abstraction. Vibe code is working in feature space, but it's actual code working under the real technical constraints. Bridging the gap. Classically, you had lost time between those mental context switches. Now it seems much more rapid. My question is, how do you manage those switches? Now they are more rapid. So I might be understanding your question incorrectly. Hang on, let me double check. So yeah, so give me an example quick because I'm not understanding, and I think I have sort of an idea what you're saying, but basically, like, how do you go from vibe coding, quote unquote, to like real coding, which I would say that's more like let me think. So I'll give you a perfect example actually, right? So with the robotic stuff that I'm doing, it's a pretty undocumented space as far as the stuff that we're using, and it's all there's it's a random SDK, and it's nobody has a repository of examples, right? So it's like you got to start from the first principles, quote unquote. And with that comes like if I didn't have knowledge that I have now, like if I was starting off my first couple of years, I would I would be completely fucked, right? Because I wouldn't have the background of like knowing how to actually implement the things that we need to implement. And honestly, I wouldn't worry about it too much, because if you're doing what you're doing already, which just from what I know about you, I think you're already there. Like, if you're reading the programming books, right? If you're keeping up with the latest technologies, if you are actually programming off hours, for the most part, I think you're going to be okay, because the fundamental skills are always going to be required and always going to be the foundation of everything, right? Like even myself, right? I love Python, and that's my favorite language, and that's the language that I use the most. But if I didn't have a fundamental understanding of what was actually happening and why, I would be very screwed. And I could still execute, yeah, but when stuff would break down, I wouldn't know why and I wouldn't know how to fix it. So I think for the most part, the foundation doesn't change. It's just about making sure that you keep executing and you keep basically building as you go forward in your career. Like you'd be surprised how many people just tend to coast once they get in the job, and there's nothing inherently wrong with that. Like we don't expect accountants to go and go to these crazy conferences or read the latest whatever books that they have, or whatever news, like whatever their version of Hacker News is, whatever their version of X Tech Pot is. We don't expect that from them, right? But for this field, in order to stand out, you kind of have to, right? And I can't tell. I know a lot of people in old roles who were working on something like, I don't know, let's say VMware, or they were managing servers, right? And now all that has pretty much gone away. It's all pretty much AWS, cloud, and those people who never learned or who never took the time outside of the regular working hours to enhance their skill set, they're kind of screwed. I think as long as you're keeping up, for the most part, you'll be fine. I know that was a long answer, but give me an example if you have one. And I'll answer as best I can. But anyways, so that installed. Let me run this test real quick. And I went ahead and just accepted the agents, diffs, and I have a copy of it, so just in case I need to roll back, I will. Okay, still got to do the actual install for the transformers. Let that run through. Okay, so we have a failure here. An instance of Chroma already exists in several different settings. I think I had that issue before. Let me check here. Okay, where are we? I think I know what it is. It's the hang on. I had an issue with my config on the there's something with the Chroma directory where I had to set up. Yeah, okay. Uh, yeah, that's right. That's right. Okay, let me. Something about Chroma. You have to run it basically completely separate, else it'll pick up the same directory. So let me install that, and I'll run this again. Quib, that was helpful. Got to run. Sorry, no problem, Quib. Good to see you as always. Sav in the chat, based. I appreciate that. Okay, so all the tests passed. So yeah, that was that weird issue, and I ran into that first time I set up Bragg for the framework. You have to do it separately for the reason Chroma. You would think they would account for that, but I doubt they probably have something, but I doubt the out of the box one has something like that. Okay, so the test passed, but I want to be sure that I'm not just saying, "Hey, the test passed, all good," right? I mean, I don't want to trust the agent 100%, so I'm gonna go in and see what they were doing, right? So this is just, oh, so this is just the imports, and I'm using the absolute import because um, the way I have my environment on this desktop, I don't want to fuck with it too much because I'm probably gonna have nuking it. So it's just the absolute environment where I'm pulling it in because it's actually the pip package itself. I could do dash e install, but I'm just going to end up nuking this in a couple of days, so it doesn't matter. So this is just the agent imports for the vector memory, the tool use. So none of this really, that's just basic setup. So the first test actually comes here and says, let's say, so yeah, it's making sure that the meta memory is good or the metadata is good. Good. Test the extended memory. So let's see here. All right, so yeah, so I'm just making sure that what we're asking and what it's responding, that it's actually saving that context. That's good. Um, I think for a basic test, that's pretty much all we need. I think I have other examples here. Yeah, so this is a more robust test. But I think for now, this is pretty good. This is just a basic, hey, is the rag completely broken? If it is, then we gotta, something went really wrong. Show error. This was my own testing. We don't need this actually. Sub in the chat, what are you using for memory? Are you using a DB or something? Yeah, so that's a good question. I'm using here. I'll show you exactly actually. Second, let me pull up a new. Okay, so I'm using just Chroma, a simple vector database. That was the easiest one to get going. So honestly, personally, I don't really like RAG. Not that I don't like it, I feel like there's other ways to get what you need, and especially for my use case, we don't really have a situation where we're going to be using a lot of retrieval. Most of our stuff is pretty simple with the pipelines and whatnot. But it's basically Chroma. I have a local embedder, which if you want to use a simple rag example for whatever small version you're running, most of the times you end up using I can't remember the exact name of this model. Whatever this model is, that's a simple local instance of Chroma, and pretty much you can save like think your responses, pretty much anything you want it to save. Like let's say you have a agent that's doing some sort of customer service, and it notices that the average response or the most common response is something to do with I don't know how to get a refund, right? The agent will keep that in memory, and it will know, hey, last time I had to get a refund going, I said this, right? Let me examine that. Boom. That's what you would use RAG for. Just as a quick example, I can think it off the top of my head. But I also have the OpenAI embedding model, and that's also using Chroma. And this is pretty cheap. The text embedding 3 small, but you can use any of the embedding models from OpenAI. Here, I'll send it to you. Okay. So yeah, so the simple smoke rag test, it's been converted to an official test. And again, this is just making sure that nothing completely went wrong. So in the chat, okay, I've heard Chrome being used. I only ask because I'm currently building a graphic for rag memory. Okay, that's interesting. What are you building it for? Because I was really using rag pretty heavily back in the day when the context windows sucked and it was pretty expensive. But it's gone, the context windows, even though they've gone pretty big, I don't know what you want to call it, like the focused context, it's also gotten better, right? So rag, in my opinion, it's not as needed now. obviously you still have a lot of flows that rely on rag, and it doesn't hurt per se. And if some people they're really into rag and they think rag is still going to be the primary retrieval method. I just think there's other ways to attack it, quote unquote. But it is an interesting and useful aspect of the agents or AI in general. So I just went ahead and threw it in there. Okay, let me move on. Okay, so the rag test is done. The observability test. Oh, okay, so this original smoke test was to make sure that the observability was working, and that's pretty much making sure, like, hey, how long does agent take to run? Um, what tool did he use, etc. What model did he use, right? Things like that. And there's actually a brand new feature, and I haven't released it in the pit version yet. I want to make all these tests official, and then I'll release it. Okay, give me 1 sec. Let me check my configuration file. Okay, so let me switch this to true. Console is fine for now. I also set up to put in a database, just a regular SQL light database. I think that's all I need to do. So first, let me just run this. All right, yeah, so that's working. Make sure I don't have my key here. All right, so regular agent run. I'm just printing out the sum, the arguments provided, and the results. And then the actual tracing, it has the IDs of the tracing. Obviously, it has the status code. It has what the tool use was, what model, etc., etc. Zap in the chat. It's a DB from scratch. It's a Rust. Oh, mic is no. It's a DB from scratch and Rust that combines both graphic DBs into one. It's especially useful for large scope tree where you want to mix context embedded in explicit relationships. It's called. Oh yeah, that's right. I think we spoke about this, right? Let me see. Helix DB. Pull it up here. Yes, yes. Now it's coming back to me. Yeah, we did. I remember you from a DM. Okay, this is interesting because there was a project that we were doing in Rust that we were looking for, and it's actually why we ended up going with a different direction, a different language, because there wasn't any good RAG for Rust. Building Linux faster. Okay, yeah, it's actually pretty interesting, right? Because yeah, like you're trying to one shot all these, which yeah, you need, right? Because like I was talking about, I think RAG at times it's a bit overconvoluted or just like overkill. I'm a big fan of like indexing and being able to quickly get like keywords and things of that nature. But obviously, RAG has its place, and I think a more traditional approach blended with RAG is better. So yeah, so it's definitely interesting. Let me know if you guys ever, do you guys have a local version? You do. Yeah, definitely check this out. One just quick feedback for myself. I'm a big fan of when, like, as soon as I get hit with whatever library I'm using, like a quick start. That way, just I know immediately what I'm working with, and like I really don't like it when I go to a framework or some sort of pip package and it's like a bunch of stuff, and then the install is kind of out there. I think honestly, I'm gonna end up copying Meriscope. Um, really good library. But you see here, like they have immediately like here you go, here's like the value prop, quote unquote, and then they go into more detail. I think it's good. That's what I would add personally. If I'm coming at it from a developer perspective, I want to know immediately what is the value proposition, and immediately how do I like what's the like is it going to be worth installing pretty much. That's just myself though, right? Just a little bit of feedback. Okay, Tyler, I want to know more about how RAG is more effective. I continue to iterate on approach. I have RAGs in place. Any other suggestions? Yeah, so unfortunately, I really think it sucks to hear, right? But it depends, and that's going to be my answer for a lot of things. Because I what RAG really offered in value was in the very early days when the models were not really good at tool calling. The context window was ass. It was terrible, and it was very expensive to run. Right, like if you wanted to get a response, you wanted to make sure that it was right, and that it could easily scale, and it was easily like you wouldn't burn tokens, right? For the most part, tokens have gone so cheap that not that it doesn't matter, right? But if you were really worried about the cost, like you're talking pennies on a dollar, right? I think it really depends on what you want. The most common use that I've seen in an enterprise setting is stuff like internal documentation, like sales, right? Like if you have sales for like a decade, you want to be able to pull up like, hey, who is this customer when they order, what state, what country, et cetera, et cetera. I think it really depends. And from what I've seen, and this is just myself, right? I work in a more medium-sized environment. We're manufacturing, and we're pretty big, but compared to Fang or something, we're nothing, right? But what I've seen, what really has put RAG out of business, quote unquote, for us is number one, models that are very cheap, like 4.1. Even the mini models now are pretty good, right? Um, Pretty much what we do is whether it's the code base or whether it's documentation, we have like a skeleton, quote unquote, that we index, and that could be anything from, for example, like Python. You could use best match. I forget that there's one text that we've used quite a bit, text rank, and you get it just right. You index it, quote unquote. You have a skeleton, and then keywords. That has been the difference between just RAG and I would say an improved process, because the keywords really let you go and say, hey, um, customer name, right? Now we're not just relying on RAG. We also have the ability to, hey, we already have all these, let's say 10,000 orders, index skeleton, right? There's no need to look at all of them if we're only going to be looking at, let's say 20 of them that have that customer name. We've reduced the context window now tremendously when now any top model is going to be able to easily retrieve that even without any tools. But now you add tools on top of that, boom, right? Like you don't even need RAG at that point. But that's a very specific use case, right? Not everyone's going to be able to do that. Not everyone is going to be able to sell a skeleton, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm a big fan of that type of stuff versus just traditional RAG. Bro, I'm already using the batch API I'm using for documentation, annotation, retrieval. Yeah, I mean, so if you're using for documentation retrieval, I think you're pretty much, that's the way to go. Like you're already doing what you should be doing. If you want to take one step above, I would say look into indexing, skeletoning, and key, basically like grep with keywords. And then if you want to go one step above, um, hang on, Tyler, 1 second. My mic is acting up here. Tyler, how do you weight the words so you can call them a keyword? Yeah, so that's where the algorithms come in. And here I'll send you an example. Actually, I wrote an article about this. This is a really simple early example that I was using. Don't want to dox any messages there. So yeah, so what I was doing is I set up text rank, and the algorithm itself is not pretty difficult. It's a pretty old algorithm, and what I was doing is I was basically removing all the words that I knew had no value, and you could pretty easily set up the weights here yourself. But that's again where the skeletoning and indexing really helps, because if you have if you pull the information in its JSON, and the dictionary, you know how it's set up, and you know that customer is going to give you your actual customer, you can add extra weight to that, and you can have the model look specifically for that. And again, a variety of different ways. Most of the models have gotten so good where you can just say, hey, look for this, give it a tool, and it'll use it. It might be able to just infer itself. But that's where you have basically a few different attempts, right? Like give it the most simple attempt, go look for this, doesn't work, okay. Now use this tool, go look for it. All right, now use RAG, use the tools, and let's beef up the model variation, right? What I mean by that is like you can sometimes just retrying works. You can switch to a more expensive model, and you can play around with the temperature of the model itself as well. Zap, thanks to I gotta run now. I'm gonna stream too. Yeah, good luck. Have fun, as the kids say. Okay, got distracted there for a bit. But okay, so this pretty much already done from what I've done before. It's just simple tests that make sure the observability is working. Don't need anything more than that. This test was really just for my own live testing. I think we don't even need this because this is really just a smoke test. Okay, so console tracing, that's also an old test. Okay, actually, a lot of these tests already. Yeah, so really, that's more the same. SQLite. This is a test that was actually giving me a lot of trouble, so I'll test that here in a second. Local smoke test, that's a RAG. This is the one that's using OpenAI. Okay, this is actually the next one I should work on. And this is using the RAG setup for both local and the OpenAI embedding model. So first, let me just run this and see if it works, and then make a test for it. Tyler, I appreciate the guide. Yeah, no problem, man, for sure. OpenAI key. Oh, that's right. I gotta set up my key. Give me 1 second. I don't like the fact that OpenRouter doesn't have any embedding models. Give me 1 second. Let me get that key. I have to go get a new one from the Twink Mafia. Bear with me. Yeah, in the chat vibe debugging. I guess you could say that. So basically, I have a bunch of smoke tests that I was using for the agent framework, and it was pretty much just making sure, like, hey, nothing is really wrong, right? The entire framework didn't break. But what I'm doing now is I'm basically taking all those tests and I'm making them real Pi tests, make sure they pass with the proper parameters and whatnot, proper expected outputs. That way, in case, as I keep building features, it will have an official quote unquote test every time I push it to the pip library. Uh, so I don't have to worry if it's going to break or whatnot. Because I really don't have that much time during the week to work on this. Maybe like an hour here and there during the week. And the smoke tests were just like a quick sanity check, really, that everything was working. Okay, 1 second. I'm getting a new key here. All right, give me 1 second. Let me set up these. All right, sorry about that. I had to set up a new key and could have probably done it safely on another screen. Just wanted to be triple sure. Let me move this. Uh, yeah, in the chat, I've always been interested in what you do. What's your main stack? Machine learning, etc. Yeah. So no real machine learning or I guess what you would call applied AI. I mean, yes, mostly on the actual practical side, like putting together APIs, um, integrating them into the workflows, the pipelines, things like that. Primarily, my day to day is mostly backend stuff, backend Python, backend JS, and CPP. That's most of my day to day stuff, and a lot of web infrastructure stuff as well. We manage our environment is pretty unique. We have a combination of in-house servers and a combination of some cloud stuff. But pretty much all of our tooling, everything that we do is 100% built by us. We've rarely used any SaaS providers. So that led to me touching a lot of different technologies. But yeah, mostly backend stuff for enterprise resource planning and environments, Linux, etc., etc. Okay, so I got my OpenAI key. So now let me run this test. And this might have the same issue that I had with the first RAG test, where I need to split it up. Let's see. Because originally I was just testing one by one. Yeah, same test or same issue here. So there's a pretty simple bug, so it should be able to one-shot it. Um, and then I think we'll be done with this one and be able to move on to the. I'm not sure if I'm gonna do the SQLite one, just because it's a brand new feature and I haven't had time to really get in there and make sure everything's working. But pretty much this is making sure that all the logs get saved to a SQLite DB, and then I made a simple fast API app that is just a simple dashboard. Let me see. That should have solved it. It's a pretty simple bug, so I should have one-shot it. Yeah, nice, good stack. I appreciate that. Okay, so it didn't pass. Let me see why. So the local one told me, the local one passing tells me that there's just probably some sort of issue with the. Okay, that's strange. Okay, yeah. So the reason it's not passing is because it has the OpenAI key now, but I'm not passing the model. The model actually gets passed via the config. So give me 1 second. Let me just make sure I don't have it input incorrectly. Sorry about that, Jason. I forgot to switch back my screen and I forgot my mic. Yeah, on the chat. Nice. Good sec, bro. Appreciate that. Okay, so I got my key right now. Now I just got to convert these smoke tests to a real test. Okay, let me see where I'm at. Let me try to run these one at a time. Okay, got a failure. Um, name error. All right, I just think it's not getting the right key. 1 second. Okay, yeah, it's just not getting the key right here in line 55. This should actually be the environment key. Okay, no failure, and this is a chroma unit test issue. It's a known bug apparently. You have to run it differently. Okay, we already solved this with the other one. Give me 1 second. Wait a minute. Did it still? Hang on 1 second. Let me double check it's getting the right key. No, it should be right. I wonder if I set it, yeah, to a temporary path, that would fix it. I don't think it will, but just for my own curiosity. Oh man, it's already been an hour. I'll probably end it soon here. I appreciate everyone who pulled up. Oh yeah, that fixed. So yeah, got to take that into account actually, as I do my feature testing and probably for documentation as well. Okay, so I just note for myself and for documentation, I'll have to make a note of that here. That's just a Chroma thing, and I think other vector DBs probably have the same thing. You got to make sure that it's a brand new instance, quote unquote. So that test pass. Let me see here. The local test we know for sure already passed, so I think we're good. Don't think we need. I think we need this actually. I think it's pretty much the test for now. Okay, so it's still, yeah. So we passed. That's just some extra, I guess, code I had in the beginning. But yeah, I'm gonna end it. I appreciate when we pulled up. I'll catch you guys later.